please welcome Mr. Balagopal Ravibalan will be on stage to give the speech. Please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Balagopal. Bala makes it easier. And I'm here all the way from India to attend this summit and hoping to take you through a hyper-personalized banking offering, how we can unlock value for our customers, right? So customer centricity is a buzzword, has been a buzzword for a long time. So we have had many of the speakers here mention about how banks have to be customer centric. And this is a journey that banks have taken over the last 15, 20 years. They've transformed from product centric to customer centric approaches in different manners. But it's not been a smooth ride. I mean, there have been a lot of challenges. There have been a lot of mistakes that they've made. Now, if you look at the key drivers, what we would find is that about 33% of consumers, the new consumers, have abandoned banking relationships because a hyper-personalization or personalized services were lacking. Now, we are talking about a generation which has never seen a world without internet or without mobile phone. So these are people who have always been connected throughout their life. I mean, some of us with gray hair or no hair, we have seen a world where there was no mobile, where there was no internet. And we know what that world is. But the millennials and the Gen Z, like my colleague before me mentioned, have not seen a world like that, and they expect instant gratification. And that's something banks are struggling to provide with. So what some of the banks have done is to build digital platforms, to build an ecosystem that supports this. But quite often, what this does is it puts it on the channel level, puts it on the periphery, while the core system continue to be the old monolithic systems that we have seen. Now that puts a tremendous pressure on what the market expects and what banks are providing, because basic personalization is no longer enough. I might be 35, I might be married, I might be a salaried employee, right? So are a million other people. Now each of this is a different customer. Each of them have different aspirations. Each of them have different needs and requirements. Now it is up to the bank to ensure that we are able to identify each customer, give them a segment of one hyper-personalized offer, which is contextual, which is real-time, and which is hyper-relevant. So that is a challenge banks are facing today, and there are different ways in which banks are trying to achieve that. So if you look at the approaches that we've taken here, we had some AI chatbots that we talked about. We have seen a lot of personalization come into the sales-based approach. If you have an RM or if you have a sales manager going to a customer, we do research. We understand what the customer wants and then provide that specific service to the customer. But when it comes to digital, we are still not there. We are still doing segmentation based on certain demographic factors and trying to provide services on the basis of that. But why is that? I mean, why is it that banks are having trouble to really know their customer? We have KYC, but do we really know our customers, right? So just a show of hands, how many of you have had recommendations from Netflix? How many of you get recommendations from Netflix? A show of hand. People getting recommendations from Netflix? All right. How many of you get recommendations from Amazon? Shopping recommendation from Amazon? And okay, now this is more common. How many of you get Google ads which are specific to what you have discussed, what you have emailed, or what you have chatted? Now this is almost everybody here in the market. Now this is hyper-personalized. This is specific to what you want, specific to what your demands are, and specific to what your context is. Now the question is, did we fill a big form and give to Netflix or Amazon that this is what we want, this is what I like, this is what I'm looking for? We never did that. We never had a big form that we gave to them. They identified this based on a pattern. Now this is the biggest mistake that we see most banks doing when we talk about personalization. We have moved from a physical world into a digital world, but what we have done is we have kind of digitalized the physical world. We still have, if I go to apply for a loan, in most banks, I still have a long form that I have to fill online. I fill it online, but it's still a long form. I'm not gathering information about the customer. I'm not gathering enough intelligence about the customer, which is shocking and surprising because our banks are sitting on a goldmine of data, right? So we have banking relationships that will give you data on a customer's transaction history. I mean, we buy a lot of things, we sell a lot of things. Now, all this is going through a bank's channel. The monetary transaction is happening through the bank. So this information should be more than sufficient to give you a holistic picture of the customer. Or if you look at what product inquiries the customer is making, am I looking for a credit card? Am I looking for a travel insurance? Am I looking for a children's education loan? So based on this, I should be able to get more insight into who the customer is. And last but not the least, the customer interactions. So we have customers talking to agents. We saw a chatbot with whom the customer was talking. Now, can we convert this information into actionable data? A simple example, if a customer were to say that Manchester United is my favorite team, this is a statement. Can that be converted into an actionable item to say, this customer is a football fan and his favorite club is Manchester United? That is the challenge. That is where we see the challenge on converting all this information into actionable data. And this is still within the boundary of the bank. This is all data within the boundary of the bank. What we are now looking at is data that goes outside, our browsing history, our shopping history, our movie viewing history. It gets even better. You know, our social media content, our travels, our Instagram posts and reels, our shopping history, all this becomes information that a bank can use to identify who an individual customer is, what their needs are. So this is a big challenge that we see on how do I get this data in the bank? First challenge. Second challenge, how do I convert that into something that is actionable? There are a lot of tools, there are a lot of solutions, some of them within this hall where we can actually convert data into something banks can take action on. The question now is, are banks ready for this? If I give you this data, are banks ready to handle this? So if you look at a typical bank, now those who are in bank, those who are on the IT side of the bank will identify with this diagram where you see this monolith, which is the core banking system. So traditionally, when we computerized the banking industry, we had this big box called the core banking, into which we stuffed a lot of things. All processing, all customer data, all information went into the core banking, which is the heart of the banking ecosystem. And we had certain channels on top with a middleware connecting it. What we've done for personalization is a lot of the activity has gone in here on this side, while this is largely unaffected. But what we're seeing now is the banking industry itself transforming. The core banking ecosystem is now getting divided into a more interactive layer here, which is more of a, what is known as a digital core, and what is like the core data heavy process, which is around the core system itself. So we have a digital core here, which basically aggregates data from different sources, which expands beyond the boundary of the bank and gets you a better picture of a customer, which will enable you to give hyper-personalized offerings, which will enable you to target segment of one, provide exactly what a customer wants in a faster time to market. You don't have to wait for entire product development. You can do that in a much quicker manner, and all this in a real-time and contextual manner. So this is where we see a lot of the banks moving. And what is important here is to understand that it doesn't have to be an open heart surgery. You have simpler ways of actually changing the banking ecosystem. Now this, for example, is a traditional banking ecosystem. So you have the product factories here, you have the various features of the product factories. Now, what is a core banking system? I mean, what was it supposed to do and what did it end up doing? So core banking system is where our accounts are stored, where our balances are stored, where our transactions are processed. That's what a core banking system was supposed to do, a system of record. But in our wave of digital transformation or computerization, we stuffed a lot of things into the core banking system, making it untenable, making it a monolith, making it a humongous monster for banks to handle. But what we're looking at now is looking at a digital core solution which will take out some of the non-essential niche functionality out of the core banking system. For example, the product factory. I can have a separate product catalog and a product management layer which encompasses not just the core products, but any product the bank is associated with, including third-party products from an ecosystem, right? We have things like pricing, interest resolutions, fees, discount, cashback, loyalty, a lot of these things. Now, these can all be separated into a relationship-based pricing module. Similarly, bundling. How do I combine two products across different lines of business? So if I want to combine a product from my core banking with something from my lending and something from my insurance systems, it is a nightmare for most banks. But if you were to move that into a niche solution that offers what is called a bundle or offer management, it makes life a lot easier. Now, this with additional niche capabilities now ensures that the core banking system is lighter. It does exactly what it was intended to do, and all the additional capabilities are now in niche systems, specialized systems that enable banks to provide hyper-personalized offering in a much quicker, much seamless manner. So if you were to look at the possibility of this, some of the use cases that you can see, some of those are possible with core banking, some of them are not possible with core banking. For example, if I want to own the customer journey itself, right? So if I want to, if I take an example of a customer who is coming to the bank looking for a automobile loan, a car loan, right? So what is the need of the customer? I mean, the customer, in traditional banking scenario, the customer comes for a loan. What we do is we do a credit appraisal, we do a credit worthiness check, the KYC, and then we disburse a loan to the customer if he qualifies. This is a typical lending transaction. But what if I were to go beyond that? What if I were to create a scenario where it's not just the loan finance that I'm giving, but I can also give allied services. Now, Mr. Collenden is Chief Digital Officer of Vietcom Bank. Yesterday in his keynote speech, mentioned that the services that we provide to end customers need not be limited by what banks offer. We can tie up with third-party partners. We are living in a world of open banking. So we can tie up with non-banking entities. We can tie up with partners in a larger ecosystem and offer products like, for example, a car import service. If I'm buying a car from outside, I can have a car import service that will help me bring the car in. I can have roadside assistance, or I can have insurance. I can have a lot of other allied services now coming in from third-party partners. Now this becomes a cohesive bundle, a cohesive package that I'm offering the customer. And this is something that will ensure that the customer is more loyal to you, there is stickiness to the customer, and the bank becomes a single-stop shop for all the needs of the customer, not just his banking products. I mean, the need of the customer was not an auto loan. The need of the customer was to own a car, to get a car. And that's what we will fulfill once we have this kind of an ecosystem-based packaging and offering available to the end customer. So this is one way of hyper-personalization where we look at the need of the customer, even the unstated need, and we are able to leverage a larger ecosystem from even outside the bank to fulfill that need of the customer. Another area where this could work is basically on a self-service model. Now, maybe about 10 years back, even now for most banks, if you go to the bank to apply for a product, they have a set of products. You select one of the products, you apply for that. Can you change the product? Can you say, I want these services, I don't want that service, I will pay this much for this, but I won't pay that much for this service? Can we do that? Most banks, no. So they have products that they offer you and you take it or you leave it. That is how most banks work. But what we are able to do with a more agile, a more nimble layer is to provide a self-service capability where customers can pick and choose what they want from the bank. So if I'm applying for a product, so I'm applying for, say, a checking account or a current account, so me as a customer, I would prefer maybe a Grab service, Grab benefits. I might prefer things like, airport lounge access. Somebody else might prefer a benefit like movie vouchers or, food coupons, for example. I might also decide that I will maintain a balance of, say, 5 million. Somebody else maintains a balance of 10 million. Now, all this is personalized. So what we're able to do is look at the product factory, look at the base product that comes out from the bank, and then decide on how it can be personalized. And this is something that can be done by the end customer in a completely automated manner, in a completely seamless manner as part of a digital onboarding where the customer designs their own product, designs their own packages, and decides what is it that they want from the bank. In this way, a bank is able to meet the demands of the customer, meet the individual requirements of the customer without actually having to build in a lot of intelligence. This could be a first step in how we are able to provide hyper-personalized products to end customers. So this here, for example, this was done for a bank in India where they didn't want to launch an army of relationship managers. India is a big country. We are over 1 billion people. So they didn't want to actually have an army of RMs bringing in customers from the length and breadth of the country. So they actually created this portal where the customers can design the products and onboard themselves onto the bank. And this was a big success for them. So this is one of the simpler use cases where I can do hyper-personalization, where the customers themselves design the product, they feel empowered, they feel like, yes, this is exactly what I want and this is exactly what I'm getting. This could be start of a journey which would lead to a larger portfolio of hyper-personalized products, hyper-personalized offerings from the bank to their end customers. There are more such examples, but in the paucity of time, I would just highlight these two. I hope this session was useful to everyone. And from me and SunTec, on behalf of SunTec, a very hyper-personalized thank you to all of you. Thank you.